The Galactic Coalition was in chaos. For years they had fought against the Krivax, a ruthless alien race determined to conquer the galaxy. Now, the Coalition's last stronghold, a once thriving city named New Haven, lay in ruins. Buildings were crumbling, fires burned in the streets, and the air was thick with smoke and despair. The few remaining soldiers of the Coalition stood ready to defend their home, but hope was fading fast. In the command center, the leaders gathered around a flickering holographic display. Commander Jackson, a seasoned warrior with gray streaks in his hair, looked at the faces of his team. They were tired, wounded, and scared. "We can't hold them off much longer," he said, his voice heavy with concern. "The Krivax are advancing on our position, and their numbers are overwhelming." The mood was grim. Captain Mira, a young and determined officer, stepped forward. "We have to fight! We can't let them take New Haven without a battle." Her fiery spirit inspired a glimmer of hope, but even she knew the odds were against them. They had lost many battles, and now it felt as if the end was near. Just then, a loud crash echoed through the room. The walls shook as the Krivax forces unleashed another wave of destruction. Outside, the sound of alien warships filled the sky, and the Coalition's defenses were crumbling under the relentless assault. The Krivax leader, a towering figure with cold, piercing eyes, broadcast a message across the city. "Surrender now, and you will be spared. Resist and face total destruction." The Coalition leaders exchanged worried glances. Jackson clenched his fists. "We will not surrender. We fight until the end." But deep down, he feared that their fight was futile. As the leaders debated their next move, a soldier rushed in, breathless and wide-eyed. "Sir, we've detected a signal from deep space. It's Earth." The room fell silent. Many had heard stories about humans, the legendary race that had once challenged the Krivax. But that was long ago, and the Coalition had lost all contact with them. "Earth," Mira echoed, her eyes brightening. "Do you think they could help us?" "I don't know," the soldier replied. "But they're sending a message. They said, 'We're coming!'" Hope surged through the room like a shock wave. Jackson's heart raced. Could humans really come to their rescue? They had been isolated for so long, but if anyone could turn the tide, it was them. "Prepare for their arrival," he commanded. "We need to hold the line until they get here." As the Coalition troops scrambled to reinforce their defenses, the Krivax continued their assault. Explosions rocked the city, and the sky darkened with smoke and debris. But amidst the chaos, there was a new determination among the soldiers. They fought bravely, using every weapon at their disposal, knowing that help was on the way. Hours passed, and the situation grew more desperate. The Krivax were closing in, and the Coalition's defenses were nearly breached. Jackson and Mira fought side by side, holding back the tide of enemies with sheer willpower. Just when it seemed all was lost, a brilliant light appeared in the sky. It was a fleet of human warships emerging from hyperspace. The sight was breathtaking. The ships were sleek and powerful, unlike anything the Coalition had seen before. They moved with precision and grace, raining down fire on the Krivax forces. Cheers erupted from the remaining soldiers of the Coalition. They could hardly believe their eyes. "The humans are here!" someone shouted. The Krivax, taken by surprise, faltered in their advance. Jackson could hardly contain his excitement. "We have a chance! Push forward!" As the humans joined the battle, their ships unleashed a barrage of firepower, tearing through the enemy ranks. The Coalition forces rallied behind them, fighting with renewed strength. Together, they pushed back against the Krivax, proving that hope had not been lost. But the war was far from over. Jackson knew the Krivax would not give up easily. Yet in this moment, with humans fighting alongside them, he felt a flicker of hope. The tide was turning, and they were ready to fight for their freedom. With a fierce battle cry, they charged forward, united in their struggle. The fight for New Haven had begun anew, and this time, they would not face it alone. As the Coalition forces fought bravely against the Krivax, the skies above New Haven lit up with the fiery streaks of incoming ships. The Coalition soldiers watched in awe as the human warships arrived, their sleek designs cutting through the smoke like blades of light. Hope surged through the hearts of the weary fighters. They were no longer alone. Commander Jackson stood atop a crumbling wall, gazing up at the sky. The human ships were massive, with hulls shining like polished silver. "Look at them!" he shouted to the troops around him. "That is the might of Earth." Captain Mira, standing beside him, nodded. "They're here to help us. We have to show them we can fight! She felt a rush of energy as the humans' ships began to maneuver in formation, their weapon systems powering up. From the command ship, a human captain's voice echoed over the radio, clear and strong. This is Captain Rodriguez of the USS Valor. We have come to aid the Galactic Coalition in their time of need. Prepare for joint operations! The Coalition soldiers cheered at the sound of the captain's voice. They felt their spirits lift, and the fear that had clouded their minds began to dissipate. Let's show them what we can do, Jackson shouted, rallying his troops. As the human ships descended, they unleashed a hail of laser fire upon the Kravax forces, catching the aliens off guard. Explosions erupted all around, and the Kravax began to retreat, confusion spreading through their ranks. Jackson could hardly believe his eyes. The humans fought with fierce determination, and their tactics were unlike anything he had seen before. The Kravax leader, seeing his forces falter, ordered a counterattack. But the humans were ready. Their ships moved as one, working in perfect harmony. It was as if they had been fighting alongside the coalition for years. Jackson watched in amazement as the humans coordinated their strikes, covering each other with pinpoint precision. In the midst of the chaos, a small transport ship landed near the command center and the ramp lowered. A group of human soldiers emerged, their faces determined and focused. They wore advanced armor that glinted in the dim light, and their eyes burned with purpose. Jackson rushed to meet them, eager to learn more about his new allies. Commander Jackson, I presume. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward, extending his hand. We're here to turn the tide of this battle. Thank you for coming, Jackson replied, shaking the captain's hand firmly. We need every bit of help we can get. The Kravax won't stop until they take this city. Rodriguez nodded, his expression serious. We've got your back. Our ships are equipped with the latest technology. We can outmaneuver them if we work together. Mira joined the conversation, her eyes gleaming with excitement. What's your plan? She asked, eager to hear how they would fight together. First, we need to establish a defensive line, Rodriguez explained. Then we can launch a combined offensive to push the Kravax back once and for all. We'll create a distraction to draw their fire while your forces flank them. Jackson and Mira exchanged glances, impressed by the human captain's confidence. Let's do it, Jackson said, feeling a rush of adrenaline. We'll show the Kravax they've underestimated us. As the humans took their positions alongside the coalition soldiers, a renewed sense of purpose filled the air. The humans shared their strategies, and the coalition learned quickly, adapting to the new tactics. Together they formed a united front against the Kravax. The battle resumed with a vengeance. The humans and coalition forces fought side by side, pushing the Kravax back inch by inch. Laser fire lit up the sky, and the sound of explosions echoed through the city. Jackson felt exhilarated, fighting alongside these brave humans who had come to their rescue. But as the Kravax retreated, Jackson knew the real test was yet to come. The Kravax would not give up easily. They were fierce and ruthless. Yet, for the first time in a long while, Jackson felt hope blooming in his chest. With the humans by their side, they could turn the tide of this war. As the fighting raged on, Jackson and Mira stood strong, knowing they were no longer alone. The arrival of the humans had changed everything, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would fight for their freedom and for the future of New Haven. The battle for New Haven raged on, but with the humans at their side, the coalition forces felt a renewed strength. Commander Jackson and Captain Rodriguez stood together, watching the battlefield as explosions lit up the sky. The Kravax were regrouping, but they had lost ground. Now it was time for the coalition and the humans to launch their counterattack. "Let's push them back!" Jackson shouted, his voice cutting through the noise of the battle. The soldiers around him rallied at his words, their fear replaced by determination. Captain Rodriguez raised his hand, signaling the start of the offensive. The human ships roared overhead, unleashing a barrage of laser fire that tore into the Kravax lines. The coalition soldiers cheered, their spirits lifted by the sight of their new allies in action. Together they charged forward, pushing through the smoke and debris. "Follow my lead!" Rodriguez yelled into his communicator, coordinating the attack. "We'll hit them hard at their flank. Mira, take your squad and move to the right. We'll create a distraction." "Understood!" Mira replied, her heart racing with excitement. She led her team towards the right side of the battlefield, where the Kravax forces were starting to regroup. As they advanced, Mira spotted a group of Kravax soldiers preparing to set up their weapons. "Now's our chance," she yelled. Her team took cover behind a damaged building, aiming their weapons at the unsuspecting aliens. On my mark! 3, 2, 1, fire! The sound of gunfire erupted as they opened fire on the Krivax. The aliens were caught off guard, stumbling in confusion as laser blasts hit their ranks. Mira felt a rush of adrenaline as her team fought bravely. They were making a difference. Meanwhile, Jackson and Rodriguez led a frontal assault, pushing directly into the heart of the Krivax forces. The humans and coalition soldiers fought side by side, their weapons blazing. Jackson felt a fierce pride as he fought alongside these brave humans. Together they were unstoppable. But the Krivax were not easily defeated. As the coalition pressed their attack, the alien leader rallied his troops. "Don't let them take this city," he roared, his voice echoing across the battlefield. The Krivax soldiers responded with renewed aggression, pushing back against the combined forces. Jackson could see the Krivax regaining their footing, but he refused to back down. "We need to keep the pressure on," he shouted, urging his troops forward. They charged into the fray, determined to turn the tide of the battle. Suddenly, a powerful explosion rocked the ground, sending debris flying everywhere. Jackson ducked just in time, feeling the heat of the blast on his face. He looked up to see a Krivax warship hovering above, its cannons primed for another attack. "We have to take that ship down," he yelled. Rodriguez nodded, understanding the urgency. "We need a plan," he said, scanning the battlefield for options. "Mira, can you get your team to flank that ship?" "On it," she called back, already moving to position her squad for the attack. They knew the stakes were high. Taking down that ship could turn the tide for good. As Mira and her team maneuvered into position, Jackson and Rodriguez laid down cover fire. They needed to keep the Krivax distracted long enough for Mira to make her move. The sound of gunfire echoed around them, and Jackson felt his heart pounding in his chest. Mira's team reached their position and prepared to launch their attack. "Ready?" she called, looking back at Jackson and Rodriguez for confirmation. "Now!" Rodriguez shouted. Mira's team opened fire, targeting the Krivax warship's engines. The powerful lasers struck true, and the ship shook violently, smoke billowing from its rear. The Krivax crew scrambled in panic, trying to regain control. "Keep firing!" Jackson yelled, feeling the excitement build. The coalition soldiers and humans poured everything they had into the attack. With a final explosive blast, the warship erupted in a fiery explosion, sending debris raining down. The Krivax forces screamed in terror, and their morale began to crumble. "Push forward! Now!" Jackson commanded, charging ahead with renewed vigor. The Krivax, now disoriented and frightened, began to retreat, their formation breaking apart. As the coalition and human forces surged forward, they knew they were winning. The battle for New Haven was turning in their favor, and the Krivax were on the run. Together, they had fought back against the enemy, and the victory was within reach. But Jackson knew they could not let up. The Krivax would not give in easily, and there were still challenges ahead. He looked at Rodriguez, who nodded, ready to face whatever came next. Together, they would fight for their freedom and ensure that New Haven would not fall. The fight was far from over, but with every step forward, they could feel the tide shifting in their favor. The cheers of victory echoed across New Haven as the Krivax forces retreated. Commander Jackson and Captain Rodriguez stood atop a hill looking over the battlefield. Smoke rose from the remnants of the Krivax warship, a sign of their recent triumph. But Jackson knew this was not the end. The Krivax would regroup, and they needed to act quickly. "Commander," Rodriguez said, his voice serious, "we can't just wait for the Krivax to come back. We need to take the fight to them. We have intel that they are hiding supplies in a nearby abandoned factory. If we can take it out, we can weaken them further." Jackson nodded. "I agree. We can't let them recover. But we'll need a small, stealthy team to do this. It won't be easy." Rodriguez glanced at the soldiers around them. "I can lead a squad of humans for this mission. We should have enough firepower to take down the factory without raising too much alarm." "Good," Jackson replied, his mind racing with possibilities. "I'll send Mira with you. She knows how to operate in these conditions." Mira, who had just finished tending to her team's injuries, stepped forward. "I'm ready for whatever comes next," she said, determination in her eyes. "We can't let the Krivax recover. We have to strike fast and hard." Rodriguez smiled. "Then it's settled. We'll move under the cover of darkness and hit the factory at dawn. We'll need to gather more intel on their defenses first." As the sun set, the team prepared for the mission. Jackson gave them a quick briefing, reminding them of their objectives. Stay focused and don't take unnecessary risks. We're here to disrupt their supply line and gather intel. If things get too hot, fall back. With that, the team set out, moving stealthily through the shadows. The streets of New Haven were eerily quiet as they made their way to the factory. The flickering lights of distant fires cast long shadows, and the tension was palpable. Mira led the way, her eyes sharp as she scanned the area for any signs of the Krivax. They crept closer to the factory, its dark silhouette looming ahead. As they approached, they could see Krivax guards patrolling the perimeter. Mira held up her hand, signaling the team to stop. "Looks like they have more security than we expected," she whispered. "We'll have to find a way in without being detected." Rodriguez nodded, pulling out a small device from his pocket. "This is a signal disruptor. It should create a temporary blind spot in their surveillance systems. We can use it to slip past the guards." Mira took the device and pressed a button. A faint hum filled the air, and the lights around the factory flickered for a moment. "Now, move!" she ordered. The team dashed forward, slipping past the guards while they were distracted. They reached the factory entrance, breathless but exhilarated. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the sound of machinery echoed through the halls. "Spread out and look for anything useful," Rodriguez instructed. "We need to find their supplies and any plans for their next move." Mira and her team fanned out, searching through crates and machinery. They found weapons, food supplies, and ammunition stacked in the corners. "We hit the jackpot!" Mira shouted, her heart racing with excitement. "This will cripple their operations!" But just as they began to gather the supplies, an alarm suddenly blared throughout the factory. Red lights flashed, and the team froze. "They've spotted us," Rodriguez yelled. "We need to move now." Mira grabbed a few weapons and shouted, "Let's go! We can't let them trap us here!" The team raced through the factory, dodging Krivax soldiers who rushed in from all directions. The sound of footsteps grew louder, and Mira felt panic rising. They needed to find a way out. "Head for the back exit," Rodriguez shouted, leading the way. They sprinted through the dark hallways, their hearts pounding. The Krivax were closing in, and every second counted. They reached the back exit, but it was blocked by a heavy metal door. "We have to force it open," Mira said, pushing against it with all her might. Rodriguez and the others joined in, but the door wouldn't budge. Suddenly, a blast hit the wall nearby, sending debris flying. "We don't have time!" Rodriguez yelled. "Everyone back!" With one final push, they stepped back just as Rodriguez fired at the door, blasting it open. The team burst through, tumbling into the open air. "Go, go, go!" Mira shouted, leading the way as they sprinted away from the factory. The sound of gunfire echoed behind them, but they kept running. As they reached a safe distance, they stopped to catch their breath, adrenaline still coursing through their veins. "That was too close," Rodriguez panted, looking back at the factory. Mira smiled, feeling triumphant. "But we did it. We gathered intel and crippled their supplies. This will make a difference in the fight." With renewed determination, the team turned back toward New Haven, ready to report their success. They had faced danger, but they had also taken a brave step forward in the fight against the Krivax. The tide of the war was shifting, and they would continue to push back until victory was theirs. The sun rose over New Haven, casting a golden light on the battlefield. After days of fighting, the city had seen both destruction and heroism. Commander Jackson stood on a hill looking down at the remnants of the Krivax forces. The tide had turned, and hope was beginning to blossom among the coalition and human soldiers. Mira and Rodriguez joined him, both tired but filled with a sense of accomplishment. "We did it, Commander," Mira said, her eyes shining with pride. "The Krivax are retreating. Our mission worked." "Yes," Jackson replied, his voice filled with relief. "The supplies we destroyed crippled their ability to fight back. But we must remain vigilant. They may regroup and return with reinforcements." Rodriguez nodded, looking out at the horizon. "We need to use this moment to rally our forces and prepare for what comes next. The Krivax will not give up easily." As they spoke, a roar erupted from the soldiers below. The coalition had pushed the Krivax beyond the city limits, forcing them to flee into the wilderness. The humans cheered, their spirits lifted by the success of their combined efforts. Jackson raised his hand for silence. "Listen up," he called out, his voice strong. "Today we have won a great battle. The Krivax thought they could take our home, but we showed them our strength. Together we can defend New Haven and our people." The soldiers erupted in cheers once more, their voices echoing against the walls of the city. It was a sound of victory, but also of unity. Humans and coalition soldiers had fought side by side, proving that they were stronger together. Mira felt a rush of emotion as she watched her fellow soldiers celebrate. "This feels amazing," she said softly to Rodriguez. "We've come so far, and we actually made a difference." "Yes, we did," he replied, a smile on his face. "But we must remember that this is just the beginning. We need to prepare for the next challenge. The Krivaks will not stop until they think they've won." Jackson turned to them, his expression serious. "We must fortify our defenses and train our soldiers. We cannot let our guard down. The victory we celebrate today can easily turn into a defeat tomorrow if we aren't ready." As they discussed their next steps, a messenger arrived, breathless and covered in dust. "Commander, we have reports of Krivak scouts in the area. They're planning another attack." The mood shifted instantly. Jackson's eyes narrowed. "Gather the troops. We need to prepare for a possible invasion. Everyone must be on high alert." Mira and Rodriguez quickly joined the other soldiers, working to spread the word. They knew that their victory was not yet secure. The Krivaks were relentless, and they had to be ready for anything. As night fell, the soldiers gathered, creating a defensive perimeter around the city. Jackson stood at the front, his voice steady. "We've fought hard, and we will continue to fight. The Krivaks may try to take our city again, but we will not let them. Our homes, our families, and our freedom are worth protecting." Mira felt a surge of pride as she looked around at her fellow soldiers. They were tired, but their spirits were unbroken. The bond between humans and coalition soldiers had grown stronger through their shared struggles. Suddenly, a loud explosion echoed through the night. The ground shook and alarms blared throughout the city. "They're coming!" Rodriguez shouted, rushing to his post. Mira grabbed her weapon, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Let's show them what we're made of," she yelled, her heart racing. The soldiers took their positions, ready to defend their home. Jackson barked orders and everyone moved with purpose. The time for fighting had come again, but this time they stood united, ready to face whatever the Krivaks threw at them. As the first wave of Krivak soldiers surged toward the city, Mira felt a fierce determination. They had faced impossible odds before, and they had prevailed. She glanced at Rodriguez and Jackson, who were both fighting with everything they had. Together they would protect New Haven. The hope they had built would not be shattered easily. With every blast of their weapons and every soldier's shout, they reaffirmed their commitment to fight for their home and each other. As the battle began, Mira remembered all they had accomplished. They were not just fighting for victory, they were fighting for hope. Hope for a future where their families could live in peace, free from fear. With a newfound strength, she joined the fight, knowing that together they would overcome any challenge. The Krivaks may have come to destroy them, but they would find only courage and resilience. This time they would not back down. This time they would win.